Hi, it's Ranjan Bhattacharya here. We're at the Baker Street Property Meet. At this event, we're focusing on property development tonight, and I'm here with one of our speakers, Marcus Higgins, who is a quantity surveyor from a specialist consulting firm called Naismiths. Marcus, good evening.
Good evening.
What is a quantity surveyor?
Well, quantity surveyor. So it's the specialist that you'd go to for if you wanted to know the cost of a building, how you best procure that building, looking at contractual issues, but mainly our focus is a cost consultancy, and we would then control that cost for the client throughout the build and delivering the project successfully.
And why is it, I mean, a lot of people will have done smaller projects, perhaps refurbishing a small house into a few rooms in a small scale HMO, and they would have managed a lot of this with a spreadsheet and very, very simply. Is it just for larger projects, or do smaller projects benefit from the same approach?
I think any project benefits from good cost control, and that's the key. I think it's cost control, being able to deliver the project within the allocated budgets that are set at the outset, so you know exactly what your outcome is and how successful that project will be.
What are the key things that people get wrong with cost control?
With cost control, the major thing probably is not reconciling their actual costs against their budgeted costs, but also inevitably things always creep in. The construction industry is very dominant. You're driven by external parties, whether it be building control and other outside sources, which you might not account for. So that is one of the hardest things to manage, ensuring that you have the correct budgets. Another major thing that a lot of people don't include are contingencies, yes. Adequate contingencies. As I mentioned, a lot of external parties are involved with construction and development, and a lot of things come out of left field, and you need to have an adequate contingency to be able to cover those additional items.
When people are looking at a particular building they're looking at buying, often people don't go down the detailed route of planning the costs initially and go on rules of thumb. It's going to cost X pound per square foot. What's your view of that sort of approach for an initial
It depends on how sophisticated you are as a developer. I think if you've got the experience, cost per square foot can work in certain circumstances, certainly new build. You can fairly get a good level of that. I think when it comes to refurbishment, there's a lot more unknowns. There's a lot more cost that you can't actually nail down. So I think that's when it does become a lot more, you're dependent on actually breaking down the trades and also looking at budget allocations for each element of works.
Yes, because you don't actually know, when you're building from the ground up, the minute you've built the foundations, I guess, everything is known.
It should be, yes. Yeah, there is an element of once you're out of the ground, you get a lot more cost certainty, but we are experiencing significant increases or decreases with the amount of labour that is available. That's also having an impact on the costs, as in what labour is actually charging the developers. So there are certain unknowns as well, even though once you're out the ground, your foundations are done, then you do have a bit more cost certainty, but there's always areas that will challenge you and challenge the budget.
So some development projects obviously can take more than 8-9 months, and over the last year or so, we've had Brexit, we've had fluctuations in the pound, and I guess when you're doing a development project, a lot of the finishing products come from abroad, kitchens, bathrooms.
Correct.
So when you're doing starting off with an estimate and the pound, what impact have you seen all of these changes have on people's cost budgets over the last year?
I think Brexit has definitely had an impact, certainly within central London. But I have to say, we've noticed an improvement outside of London and to the regions, the other larger cities. I think investors are looking outside of London. With regards to your earlier question, with regards to material prices, we've definitely seen an increase in those.
And labour?
And labour. We have got a skill shortage, definite skill shortage, which has driven up the price for carpenters, for plumbers, for tilers. And it's not just on the construction industry, also in my profession we have a skill shortage where less people have gone to university over the last, since 2010 through to let's say 2013, which has had a direct impact on my profession as well, so it is on both sides. With regards to the pound, we're definitely seeing material suppliers, internal doors, that type of thing, whereby they're coming from Italy or they're coming from Poland or what have you, that developers are starting to look inwards to the UK. We have a lot of good products here in the UK, and I think it's just looking around and making sure you get the best deal.
I know a lot of the people watching this are looking at permitted development, and they're looking at commercial buildings such as offices and converting them into residential use. And it's a very hot topic. There's huge demand for these sorts of sites, and often they're block viewings and there's a limited timescale to make a decision. But the question I've got for you is that a lot of these office buildings, you know, it's very difficult to come up with a price per square foot because it depends on what you're starting with, whether it's asbestos ridden, what the construction is, and I mean, because it's not going to cost the same amount per square foot to convert every building.
No, it's not.
Do you have any views on how people can start?
Well, unfortunately, it depends very much on the floor plate of the office building.
What do you mean by floor plate for people?
So how the office building is laid out, where you can actually, what the width of the building, existing width of the building is, because at the end of the day, it's going to dictate, you know, a standard one-bed apartment, a two-bed apartment are going to be relatively standard sizes. What you don't want to do is have a floor plate that doesn't suit a particular size of apartment. You also got to think about how you're going to get the core areas through. So it is very difficult in getting cost per square foot for that. I mean, we've got projects that we're overseeing at the moment which range from £70 a square foot to £120 a square foot. And it does depend on the core areas as well, how good the core areas are. Taking back the services there, you're correct, asbestos. It's a common thing in every building built in up to year 2000. And I think nearly every office building will have some form of asbestos. What I would say is the building that you're looking to purchase should have an asbestos register, which should identify where the asbestos is and what type of asbestos it is. So you can actually get that information and get a fair idea on budget for removing that asbestos during the works.
Yes, and I think the other factor, which a lot of people miss with offices, offices built from the 70s up onwards tend to be brick, and before then they have often these singles skin type of glazing type of things which need considerable recladding, which of course adds to the cost.
Well, and it also, you know, you're obviously doing this as a permitted development. When you replace the cladding, you then have to go for planning permission, which then increases your programme, which could affect your delivery timescales when you're looking to hit market. But also, you know, there's an unknown that you might not get planning permission. I think, you know, on all the projects we've been involved with, planning permission not been a problem because you're upgrading it. A lot of the 70s buildings, the windows don't comply with building regs. You won't get the U values, so you do end up replacing them.
So, what sort of projects do people typically engage your services in?
Well, I have to say we're involved. The smallest project we've got is a £100,000 build, and we're right up to 70 million. Funds out, so it's across the range, but typically I think where we tend to fit in alongside development finance with lend invest, those types of clients, it is the probably £2 to £2.5 million of gross of development.
We actually haven't touched on that because of course if the developer is getting funding to fund the development process, the bank or the lender, whoever it is, always wants to make sure that the monies are being properly spent.
Correct.
And that's where you guys come in.
That's where, yes, part of our role for types of lend invest is that we are basically there, ears and eyes on site, but we're also there to help the developers along, give them guidance. You know, we're monitoring a large number of projects. We see the same kind of subcontractors across various sites. We see issues, we see problems, and it's just sharing that knowledge with the developers to ensure that they successfully complete their development.
Brilliant. I'm really looking forward to your talk tonight. Where can people find out more about your consultancy company?
So the website is www.naismiths.com.
naismiths.com. So we're here on the fourth Wednesday of every month. There are plenty more videos from all sorts of people on this YouTube channel, but the best way to experience the Baker Street Property Meet is to come along to one of our monthly meets. We're the largest property meet in the UK. We have over 200 people who come each month. We always have some fantastic expert speakers, and we're on the last Wednesday of every month. And you can find out more at bakerstreetpropertymeet.com. Thanks very much for now.